welcome to R&R something or other. This here is a Watkins Rapier 44. Now I think, going by a little bit of Googling, that it predates 1964, which makes it approximately 1 million years old. Wait 1 second. I need a cup of tea, it's lovely. So, pre-1964, it's 1 billion years old, right? What did I do to this guitar? Well, I changed out the tuners. They were awful. One of them had been changed out already, and it was just a kind of a nasty affair. So these ones are fairly cheap. And you notice that they are individually spaced. You couldn't get a regular 6-in line like your standard Fender or Fender. That all sort of screw together nice and tight. These had to be well spaced because, as you can probably tell, it is kind of a long headstock. I had to put a string tree all up in there because of this giant length. We have a nut there. It's quite nice. It's like a little two-tone sort of a thing. Maybe you can check it out on the Instagram thing. There'll be a little bit of closey-uppy thing. The nut itself isn't like your average nut. It's more of a spacer because we have a 0 fret all up in there. Speaking of frets, I refretted it. These are Syntoms 230-140, which means they're 2.3 mil wide, and they are glued in using some gel super glue, and that makes for nice things for 2 reasons. I like to use glue because when you're refretting, you're using old slots, and some of the old frets had started to lift up anyway, so with new slots put in and new frets, I want to glue them in just to make sure, 1, that they are in place, they're not going to move, and 2, I do believe the little bit of extra material down in that slot, that glue, helps to solidify things to such a point where there's just 0 vibration with the frets. Sometimes you get, with old guitars, you'll get a note that sounds really dull, and it's because the fret is just vibrating a little bit. It's not seated nice and tight, and it's actually sucking some of the vibration out of the string, which gives you a shitty sounding tone. So there we've got a nice solid refret. What is it, 22 frets, not including the 12, 15, 17, 19. Yes, it looks like 22, not including the 0 fret. So that's nice. Now, Rapier 44, the number sort of coincides with the pickups here. The Rapier 22 had 2 pickups. The Rapier 33 had 3 pickups, so Rapier 44... Four pickups! 4 pickups, just like this. Aha, but no, it's not 4 pickups. It's actually 3. 3 on this one anyway. This guy here is a complete dud. When I took it all apart, the only thing behind the little foil, nice little foil thing there is a little bit of foam. I thought, did someone just gut the old pickup? But I didn't see any evidence of there ever being any wiring going to that. Now, to be fair, I did not go through it with a fine tooth and comb. I didn't have all the time in the world to figure this guitar out. Plus I figure, it's just going to stay the way it is. I wasn't going to gut it and all that. The pickups themselves are pretty primitive. Really cheap. And you might hear kind of nasty, but I have a kind of a weird ongoing theory between cheap from the 60s and cheap from the, from the maybe 80s onward. I don't know. Cheap back in the 60s, before big time globalization and before everything was made in China, cheap meant that you had to kind of figure out how you were going to do it on the cheap. Now, the pickups in this are kind of like someone just maybe took, 2 or 3 fingers and wrapped some copper wire in it, taped it up, sort of flung them in there, put a few magnets in there, and that's how they made the pickups. This thing is horrifically microphonic. Okay, so how does that compare to cheap today? Well, I think cheap today mimics the way things are done well, but they still don't quite carry it off. So this is kind of like cheap, but a special kind of cheap, if you know what I mean. Kind of handmade, a little bit unique. I mean, the thing definitely sounds nasty, but it's a unique kind of nasty. You take, for instance, your Squiers, your Epiphones. These days, the hardware is where the cheapness comes into it, really. This kind of cheapish hardware, cheapish pickups. The machine head's definitely just not very nice. And there you go, it's all cheap. But the thing is, it's kind of kitsch cheap. So today it has, you know, it has some value and all that, pardon me. So how does it sound and how does it actually work? Let's discover together. So you've got a switch here labeled R and S, and I presume that means rhythm and solo. So rhythm is forward, and it's your 2 pickups, and solo is your back 2 pickups. And then you have a volume for these, a volume for, well, these, a volume for these, and then you have a single tone control. Now you have here a switch that goes from 24 to 234 to 4 to 34. Off the top of my head, I don't know what that means. It might be capacitor values because there's a little slightly different tone, right? So here is let me turn them shits up. So this would be the rhythm setting. Microphonic, and that it actually sounds kind of cool. And all you've got on this, all you've got on the rhythm channel is your volume. That's it. I think. I don't think any of the other controls do anything. No. So your rhythm is, it's so, what am I gonna say here? Rhythm would be, you know how on a Jaguar, a Jazzmaster, you've got controls and then you flip it up to the rhythm and it's a completely different thing. I think back in the day, rhythm pickups were the thing. Like in old jazz guitars, that's where you had a pickup. You go back here, soloing was a whole new thing because way back when the guitar was never meant to be a solo instrument, it was more of an accompanying sort of a vibe. But somebody thought, let's turn up the treble. I'm digressing horrifically. So we're gonna take it from R to S, which would be the solo, and we're using our bridge pickups here. And here is where it starts to sound nasty. So this is the 24 setting. Kind of tinny, really, really bright. Sounds like a treble booster on it. 2, 3, 4. That sounds all right. It sounds like a bridge humbucker. 4. There's a little bit of tone shift there. And that's probably going through a certain value capacitor, just maybe shaking things up a little bit. And then we've got, oh no, my bad, this is 34. 4. 234, and then 24. Okay, so that's probably with a big treble bleed on it, is it? No, wait. There's a control here that says 24 tone. Now, tone controls now, when you turn them up, they get brighter. Tone controls back then, when you turn them up, they went fuzzy. So if you want today's modern, slick, high tone, you turn the tone down. I have a Vox 12 string, does exactly the same thing, or did, because I couldn't get around it. So this is wired, you know, as original. So on the 24 setting, I guess you've got a tone control. And then your 2, 3, 4 setting, really tinny. I think maybe these two things are working out of phase. That's where you get that tinny sound. And then 4. What's the difference between 4 and 24? Not a whole lot. Probably going through a capacitor. And then 34. A little bit chimier than the previous one. And that's kind of it, really. One strange sort of a thing is the switch goes from rhythm up here and then back to solo. That makes sense. That's intuitive. But the way it's the volumes are labeled is kind of strange because your solo volume and your rhythm volumes are here. So you've got your solo volume ahead of the rhythm. So it's kind of like a crisscross sort of a thing. You know, you would think that your solo would be here, but then, you see, if you're in the 24 thing, which affects the back pickups here, your volume and your tone are together. But still, I would have put the rhythm volume up there and shifted these around there. I'm not gonna, because this is the way the thingy is labeled. And I think that kind of does it. What else can I say? Bolt on neck, give it a little bit of a shim. We've seen the tuners already, the nut, the frets. That it does have a tremolo on it, although I don't know where the arm is. So if I want to use it, I can jam a screwdriver into the hole. Shh, I don't really do that. Nobody does that. Who would ever do such a thing? And yeah, I think that does it on this one. I had a lot of fun with this. Oh yeah, the fretboard. It's a radius of around 9.5. It couldn't quite make up its mind. But I settled on 9.5, and I think the edges kind of bevel down just a little bit. And to achieve success in that department, I sort of overbent the frets, pressed them in, so that at least there was a little bit of tension. So I'm hoping they'll never pop up, hence the glue being used in the slots. And, you know, what else can I say again? Nothing really. It's been an absolute pleasure to work on stuff like this. I really enjoy old shit and old cheap nasty shit, because like I say, cheap back then is different from cheap now. And thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, whatever.